Hello everybody, my name is Josh and I'd like to welcome back to another episode of Coffee, Cats, and King. We will discuss books both new and old. I'll share with you pictures of my cats will make you wish they were your cats. And I'll drink enough coffee for me and everybody watching. The mug today is a Beetlejuice mug this time. You know, it's a new year, new start to the channel in a way. So I'm going to do something that I have not done properly up to this point, which is to give you folks a recommendations video. And of course, because I cannot do things the conventional way, I decided, hey, my channel is mostly about horror, so let's give a science fiction recommendations video first. Yeah. So, I will have horror recommendations coming up, but today's video is all about science fiction. I do very much enjoy my science fiction and read a decent amount of it, but there are plenty of channels out there that know a lot more than I do. The difference here is that I'm hoping I can give you some recommendations that you would not find elsewhere, because I read some really old, really weird, really obscure books. Which also unfortunately means that if you are looking at these recommendations, you may have to find them on eBay or some sort of used book store online, something to that effect. All of that said, I have 10 recommendations here for various science fiction books that I think some of you out there will dig. I have basically set this up as an if-then sort of scenario, and you'll see what I mean here in just a moment. So, I'm going to go on and get into this, and we'll see how this goes. Number one, if you're a fan of the brutality and sexuality of Richard Lehman and Edward Lee, then read Biospace Tyrant by Piers Anthony. This is the start of a science fiction series. I picked these up thinking that they would be typical science fiction, and within the first 20 pages realized just how wrong I was, because in those first 20 pages there is murder, there is sexual assault, and worse. Honestly, I was kind of hooked just because I wanted to see how far Piers Anthony was going to take this. I'm not kidding when I say, if you like Lehman or Lee, these are the books for you. Because Piers Anthony does not hold back in any way. From start to finish, this series is just brutal. Absolutely brutal. So if you're looking for something in the science fiction realm, but you're craving that depravity, then this could be one for you 100%. And the good part about this is that these are definitely readily available on sites such as eBay, where you can pretty much buy the whole series at once for, $12 or $15. The second one that I have for you folks is, if you like action over storytelling, then try Water of Thought by Fred Saberhagen. Now, the Water of Thought does really weird things to people. If they consume this stuff, if they get around it, then some folks, their intelligence may skyrocket all of a sudden, and they have the answers to every question that we have ever wanted the answer to in the world. And it's so much that their minds can't take it, and they basically lose themselves totally. Others may consume a bit, and their levels of lust skyrocket through the roof, and they cannot contain themselves. They essentially become cavemen out looking for any kind of action they can get, Violence, same way. Some of them take it and they can't help themselves. They just want to hurt the next person that they see. And all of this Water of Thought, if you will, is found on this little asteroid, moon, whatever you want to call it, called Kappa. And these humans have been tasked with destroying the Water of Thought, despite the fact that the native species there needs this for every ritual that they do, and most importantly, it is necessary for what they call the breath of life. And of course, the humans don't know what the breath of life is. They don't know anything about the rituals that these creatures, these humanoid creatures, do. They just know that it's bad for humans, so we're going to destroy it. And this is one of those interesting books where the humans are 100% the villains. Even though we are following the humans, we're the villains here. We're the bad guys, and you're kind of hoping that we'll get our comeuppance. And so this book is action-packed. There is science involved, but again, everything is much more on the action-y side. I don't know if it's the case for every copy of this book, but my copy is also even filled with illustrations throughout. These really cool sort of blackout illustrations that are just throughout the book that are really awesome. And this one flies by. It's a book that you can read in one sitting. It's action-packed. There's just all kinds of stuff happening that is going to suck you into the story and will not let you go until it's over. So if you're an action fan, this might be the science fiction for you. For my third recommendation, if you want an epic spanning generations but aren't a fan of series, then pick up Heart of the Comet. This is written by Gregory Benford and David Brin, and Heart of the Comet is a hefty novel. The text is very small in this book, and it's about 500 pages. That said, this is exactly what I say it is. This expands generations to follow the life cycle from microscopic organisms as they're trying to survive and thrive against these other organisms as they eventually come up, make it to land, and become a society. And it is incredibly fascinating. This is a story that packs so much in there. And yes, there is some serious science involved in this particular book. That said, again, it's just so fascinating watching from start to finish these generations upon generations upon generations as they advance, as they become something more. And it is just, it's a book that's going to enthrall you. So again, if you don't want to get into a series, but you want something that feels like an epic, Heart of the Comet is absolutely a book for you. Recommendation 4 says, if you crave political intrigue and power plays but aren't fond of violence, then why haven't you read the Foundation series from Isaac Asimov? This is a very famous series by a very famous author, and this is one out of everything on this recommendation video I have that you are most likely to have heard about and most likely to have maybe dipped your toes into already. But if you haven't, then let me tell you, you are missing out. Isaac Asimov, first of all, was just one of the greatest science fiction writers of all time. Now, Foundation series is, again, arguably one of his best bits of writing. Very interesting series in that the vast majority of the action occurs off screen. And you are more, it's almost like you're sitting in a boardroom hearing about what happened and what the next move is from these folks, instead of seeing the explosions, seeing the deaths, seeing what's happening. That's all aside. You are following the main players, the guys that are making these decisions, that are making this stuff happen. And this is about a really fascinating science that can look at these crazy amounts of data and make fairly well-educated guesses on what is going to happen in the future. And say, okay, if we attack this other nation here, then there is a 83% chance that this is going to happen. If, however, we do this instead, then we can turn things around, and there's a 77% chance that this will happen. We're not talking about immediately. We're talking about these guys are predicting events in the future happening 500 years later, and it's really astounding what he came up with here. Again, just sucks you in, and if you are not someone that needs an explosion on every page, then the Foundation series is just so amazing. Absolutely one of my favorite series of all times, from any genre, in fact. And 100% a series that you should read if you are someone that just wants something that's going to draw you in, but want to stay away from the violence and the more R-rated material. The fifth prompt here is, if you're afraid of the technological future, then know you aren't alone. So were the contributors of Machines That Think. If you've been around this channel for a while, you know that this is my favorite science fiction anthology of all time, and one of my favorite anthologies, period. Machines That Think can be difficult to get a hold of, but if you can get a hold of it, absolutely fascinating. This is a rather lengthy, rather old anthology all about robots, computers, and AI, well before most of these things were even really around in any everyday capacity as they are now. And what is so fascinating about this book is the science involved. One, the fact that 60, 70, 80 years ago and before even, they got it right. A lot of the stuff in this book happened exactly the way they say it did. The technology works the way that they said it was going to work. We're seeing some of the disasters, some of the disturbing things that we were afraid were going to happen, and they predicted it in this book. Now, that's not to say that every story is trying to scare you off of technology. There are some very heartwarming stories in this where the robots, where the AI are the good guys, where they're doing positive things for us. But there are also a lot of cautionary tales here where, hey, let's keep a grip on this because things could turn out poorly for humanity if we give them too much control, if we give them too much power. So these are stories that span, I think, from the early 1900s, maybe even the late 1800s, all the way up until the 80s when this book came out. And it is so incredibly fascinating. I highly encourage you to read this if you are fearful of the technological future, because so are these guys. And unlike most of us, these guys knew what they were talking about, because science fiction back then was mostly written by guys that were legitimate scientists who were making discoveries, who were creating technology and advancements that are still in use today. So give this one a read if you can find it. Highly recommend it to anybody, but especially those that want a little shiver from what could potentially happen in regards to robots and AI, because these guys knew what they were talking about. Number 6 is, if you prefer your fiction with a hefty dose of humor, then get a copy of Robert Sheckley's Immortality Inc. This is light on the science, high on the humor. And some of these characters might just be high. This is about a future 2110 AD, in fact, where for the right price, which is a very hefty price, you can be brought back from death and put into a new body. And there's a particular gentleman who that happens to, who is from a much earlier date, and he kind of lucks into this. It'll be explained in the book, but he lucks into it. He's now in 2110 and a different body, a much better body in ways, but worse in others. And he is trying to learn about the world around him, how to survive, but also how to kind of be the con man that he was before he died the first time. And It's very funny. The social commentary and political humor here is pretty spot on. So if that's not your thing, then this might not be the book for you. But Robert Sheckley certainly had some things to say. And he does it with a healthy dose of humor here. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars because some of the humor was a bit over the top or a bit too on the nose for me. But that said, this is a book that I think a lot of people are going to get chuckles out of. And no matter which way you lean politically or in regards to certain social elements, I think you can still really enjoy this book. So if you're looking for some humor in your science fiction, Immortality Inc. may be the one for you. Recommendation 7 is, if you're curious about what your cats really do while you're at work, then sneak a peek at Starter Villain by John Scalzi. This is a newer release, one of the very few newer releases on this little recommendations video, in fact. And this is another one with a healthy dose of humor, but also with some decent science in there as well. This is a book about a gentleman who is just one of the kindest souls out there, but very down on his luck. And his uncle dies, and he finds out that he has inherited a position in his uncle's business. What he does not realize at first is that his uncle's business is basically as a supervillain. His uncle created all this technology that he then sold to world governments for the highest price. One of the folks who is kind of in charge of this company happens to be a cat that communicates with him via this cool cat keyboard. Of course, when he first meets her, he does not realize this. He just thinks it's a stray that he has taken in, that he uses the last bit of his money to take care of. And she remembers this, of course, and then in turn helps to take care of him. This book is really funny at times. I loved that the science made sense, and that all of the decisions that the supervillains make, again, there's a reason behind them, and John Scalzi does a great job of making you smirk because you realize, hey, that could almost work. And I just had a blast with this book. I think you will too, if you are a fan of animals in general, but if you're a cat person, you're going to love this. Or if you just want to understand a little more about the seedy underbelly that is supervillainy, then this is a fantastic science fiction book for you. Number 8 is, if you're having a tough time leaving horror behind, then have no fear. Hiram Ennis has you covered with Leech. Leech is a science fiction book that came out last year, and this is very much science fiction horror. This is a very, very fascinating book that takes place over multiple timelines. However, it is told in first person, but it's still told through multiple characters, because the individual, the entity that we are following, is actually a parasite that has infected multiple people all over the place in all different professions. And this parasite can jump from person to person and just kind of take over that role as it wants. And in this story, there is another parasite that is starting to infect people, killing them, taking them over in general. And the parasite that we are following does not like this. It wants to be the one in control. It has vast plans to slowly take over, and this other thing is getting in its way. So this is just such a fascinating read. Very horrific if you are someone that enjoys body horror or science fiction horror in general. This is a fantastic book for you. It is told in a style that may be a bit too, almost old-fashioned or artsy for some people. But if you can get over that and just give yourself a few chapters to get into it, then I think you'll really dig this book. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just such a clever, unique, interesting book. And I think it could be a great book if you are trying to branch off from horror into science, but not quite ready to jump fully into it. I really think that Leech is a great one for you. Number 9 is, if you think yourself an intellect and are looking for a challenge, then look no further than Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. So, I know some people that have read this book are immediately going to say, well, hold on, man. There's a lot of fantasy in that book, too. Yes, there is. This is a science fiction fantasy mesh. That said, the science in this book is hard science. It does not hold your hand. It is very much true to life on how it works and why it works. So yes, there is a healthy dose of fantasy in this book as well, but where the science comes in, believe me, it's going to be hard to follow. If you come into this book thinking that you are any sort of wordsmith or that you have conquered tough books in the past, man, you don't know what you're getting into, because China has an understanding of the English language that just far surpasses that of not even just common folk, but those of us that have a love for the English language. This guy is probably going to make you dig out your thesaurus, dig out your dictionary just to get through this book. And to some people that's going to tick them off and they're immediately going to be put off. But that's why I say, if you are a person looking for a challenge, honestly, you can probably pick up a few of his books, but Perdido Street Station in particular is one that is going to, it's going to make your brain hurt trying to keep up with at times. That said, it is an immensely enjoyable book, very, very difficult, but so well worth it if you can just follow along, take your time. Don't be afraid to pick up a dictionary when you need to, because China's going to get you on a few of these. And I say that as a gentleman that, although I do not speak in a very eloquent manner, certainly write and understand the English language in what I thought was a pretty advanced level. It's not the case, not when it comes to China, no sir. So this book, if you are okay with a healthy dose of fantasy and science fiction mixed, is a fantastic challenge for any of you out there. And I'm not even going to talk about the book itself. You can look up the book, and I think that the synopsis alone is going to give you a great idea of what to expect. Because believe me, this is it's going to make your brain hurt, but it's well worth it. And number 10, the final suggestion, the final recommendation I'm going to give, is if you don't know where to start and want to sample everything that science fiction has to offer all at once, then go hire yourself a couple of guys with strong backs to help you pick up the big book of science fiction. Man, this thing is colossal. It's huge. It is 1,200 pages, double-sided, tiny text, and it has stories in here that span well into the 1800s, all the way up until the present. It has everything. It has cyberpunk, it has steampunk, it has every subgenre in between. Feels like it's covered in this thing. I read this very slowly over the course of an entire year, guys. That's how much content is in this book. And if you don't know where to start, and you maybe want to get an idea of what you like in science fiction, this could be an absolutely excellent book for you. And if you're already a fan of science fiction, and you want to expand your horizons, again, you cannot beat this book. So, those are my 10 science fiction recommendations. I know it's weird that it's science fiction instead of horror that I'm starting with, but I was just inspired and decided to do it. So let me know what you think below. If you want more videos like this, please comment below, tell me so. I have a horror one in the works right now and some others to come, so we'll see. But that's it for today. Have a great day, read some awesome science fiction, and most importantly, drink great coffee. Cheers.